Hello, my dear. Hi there, hello. My name is Sydney. My pronouns are they, them. Speaking, I'm a disabled, autistic, queer, trans, non-binary actor, educator, media analyst, composer, and advocate. I'm a white young person with shoulder-length, light brown, curly hair. I am wearing a navy blue shirt with flowers. I was about to say birds. White flowers on it, and I'm sitting in front of a bookshelf. Super glad to have you here. You're welcome to like, comment, subscribe, leave a super thanks, whatever brings you joy, but also no pressure. Let's talk about the environment. Also, if climate change is a huge trigger for you, you're welcome to skip this video, but also please know that I'm not going to be going super in-depth or like going too much in depth into the upsetting and overwhelming pieces of climate change, and I'm not going to be listing like the we only have this many years left statistics. We're not here to talk about that. Today's conversation is specifically about ableism within the sustainability movement and how we need to change that, so it's less on the climate aspects. Yeah, so first and foremost, what is eco-ableism? Eco-ableism is defined as a failure by non-disabled environmental activists to recognize that many of the climate actions they're promoting make life difficult for disabled people. Examples of eco-ableism include blanket bans of plastic straws, or removing disabled parking spaces to make way for bicycle lanes, forcing people to walk or cycle places when that is not a possibility for many disabled people, and ignoring disabled people in your emergency planning. Because here's the thing, a lot of pro-sustainability measures that people are taking and also forcing others to take just simply make life worse for many, many disabled people. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about that's talked about a lot in this disability spaces is the straw situation. It does expand to wider single-use products as well. We're going to get to that. If you're unfamiliar with the straw situation, plastic straws became banned in many places starting a few years ago because a video went viral of a turtle with a straw stuck up its nose, and it caused public outcry, and then straw bans happened everywhere. Businesses replaced them with paper straws, other kinds of straws, or got rid of them altogether, and people still using plastic straws are widely criticized for not caring about the environment and whatnot. But the thing is, did you know that plastic straws were initially created for disabled people? Yeah, they exist for people who have a hard time bringing a cup or spoon up to their face to drink, or who are in a position that makes that impossible. They also help people with motor difficulties to not pour liquids all over themselves or accidentally choke on said liquids. And as somebody who has a hard time getting myself to ingest liquids sometimes, using a straw can make me forget that I'm doing it, and then I usually get enough in my body. So straws are important, and all of the alternative options to plastic straws, such as metal, paper, glass, silicone, etc., all pose serious issues in their own way. I'm not going to go through all of those. I'll just put this nice little table on the screen for you to pause and read, because I, for one, am very, very tired of talking about this issue as a disability advocate, because it's been going on for like 4 years, and we should know better by now. But this also expands to lots of other things as well. For people with really serious allergy issues, single-use plastic things aren't just convenient like they are for anybody else. They are the only way to directly ensure their safety. So yes, I guess it's extra wasteful to have your muffins individually wrapped in plastic, but also if you're severely allergic to gluten and you're getting your muffin in a college dining hall for breakfast, you're gonna kind of want that to be safely sealed in a plastic package. Single-use packaging is also important for literally any other thing that needs to stay sterile. Think about people who need to use a portacath or a feeding tube. Their things should probably be individually plastic wrapped, so that when they change things out and like use that equipment, they don't get infections, because that would be bad. Because in case you're wondering, before plastic straws and single-use sterile packaging, these people just died, which is bad. We don't want to do that. Also, while we're on the topic of allergens, it's also really common for people to be shamed for not eating vegetarian or vegan because we're making the environment worse by eating meat, and meat alternatives are just as nutritious as real meat or whatever. Did you know that a solid 90% of these protein alternatives are soy-based and or are also not FODMAP friendly? Because I am on a partial FODMAP diet due to my intestines not working, and I'm also allergic to soy. So no matter how much I ethically want to be a vegetarian, I would become malnourished almost immediately and probably die, which, bad. And even if somebody was able to physically eat these alternatives, do you know how expensive they can be? Because most sustainable alternatives to foods and other products are priced really, really high. And yes, that is a systemic issue that needs to be fixed. These things should definitely be cheaper, but that does not matter in the sense of like the right now, what can this person afford to get food in their body to survive? And we're gonna get to race in a bit, but people of color and disabled people are very likely to live on or below the poverty line due to systemic issues. And just being able to afford sustainable products is a privilege most people do not have. This also goes for the arguments of reducing your carbon footprint, for example. Now, I'm not saying that we can't all try our best and that we shouldn't all consume less, because I think that we should, but we do need to acknowledge that most of the things you're supposed to change to reduce your carbon footprint are not possible for a lot of people, either physically, monetarily, or both. Which is, like, that's fine, but then these things become laws that you have no choice but to follow, and there's no nuance in that legislation for people who genuinely can't follow the laws. And climate activists spend so much time attacking disabled people, saying we don't care about the environment and that we're terrible people, and that's just not okay, and also not productive, but mostly not okay. Especially because 100 companies are responsible for 71% of the greenhouse gas emissions, so maybe attacking a handful of straw users is not the most best use of your time or energy. But what bothers me the most about this is the fact that climate change also affects disabled people the most. We've seen various news stories about major power outages across the country on several occasions. Have you ever thought about the fact that when the power goes out, people who are on ventilators in their homes suddenly don't have ventilators anymore? And that the power just shuts them off? And that this kills people regularly? Or the fact that disabled people lose their mobility equipment in forest fires and floods and other natural disasters all the time, but insurance doesn't cover it a second time, if it even covered it the first time, which usually it doesn't. Also, extreme temperatures can wreak havoc on people's bodies. People living with schizophrenia tend to show a mortality rate as much as 50 times higher than the general population when heat waves hit. I have a dysautonomic disorder called POTS, which basically means that my blood pressure is wacky and my internal temperature control is inevitably wacky, and when it's really, really hot, I can't stay upright for very long without passing out. Mental health medications, particularly those most commonly used for schizophrenia, and also many SSRIs, also make you more susceptible to overheating and having heat stroke. And in the case of increased fires and heat waves hurting air quality, people with lung issues are at much higher risk than the general population to have further damage caused. And obviously, in the case of pandemics as well, disabled people are gonna have the most issues. But the biggest problem in all of this is that most disaster evacuation plans don't actually have any accessible options. Many public shelters are inaccessible. The rubber boats that they use to get people out during floods can be impossible for wheelchair users to get into. And in the case of Hurricane Katrina, most evacuation buses did not have wheelchair lifts, many of the emergency shelters were inaccessible, and people with visual and hearing impairments were unable to obtain local safety information. We literally get left behind. And not only does climate change make disabilities more disabling for already disabled people, how many times can I say disability in a sentence? But they also create new disabilities. Many health outcomes and diseases are sensitive to climate, including heat-related mortality or morbidity, air pollution-related illnesses, infectious diseases, particularly those transmitted indirectly via water or by insect or rodent vectors, and refugee health issues linked to forced population migration. Yet, changing landscapes can significantly affect local weather more acutely than long-term climate change. Land cover change can influence microclimatic conditions, including temperature, evapotranspiration, and surface runoff that are key determinants in the emergence of many infectious diseases. Most of this research into how climate change is increasing disability specifically lists the data in DALYs, also known as disability adjusted life years, which basically measures somebody's life based on what they consider to be life expectancy and diminished quality of life. Super eugenicsy. I hate it, so we're just gonna move on from that, but definitely important to recognize when we're talking about disability and climate change that climate change is causing a lot of disability. And then there's also the intersection of race here. We know that disability is often most common in minority communities due to the physical toll of chronic stress and the existence of environmental racism, as well as the overlap of poverty, lack of access to healthcare, racism within the healthcare system, and so many other systemic issues. So not only are we hurting our disabled communities, but we're also hurting all other minority communities as well, because unsurprisingly, all oppression is very much intertwined. We can't just fight for one thing completely separate from every other thing, and we also can't be infighting with each other, because if we put all of that energy that we're infighting with into fighting what needs to be fought outside of the movement, we would actually create a whole lot more change. And I've spoken before about how disability is always conveniently left out of the DEI movement. It's because it makes people uncomfortable, and it makes people have to realize that a lot of one-size-fits-all problems are in fact not one-size-fits-all. And look, I get it. The thing about the climate crisis and why it is very triggering to me specifically is that it does feel like a really big looming thing that we cannot individually fix. And I understand why being a diehard activist and fully convinced that all of these sacrifices in your life that you're making to help save the planet are effective, and then hearing other people go around and talk about how those things don't make as much impact as we think they do, and also we need to stop banning things, that would be very overwhelming, and it would feel like people are actively undoing the tiny amounts of change you've finally been able to make. And I totally and I completely get that, but I also know that we wouldn't have to undo that work if it were inclusive and nuanced to begin with. And if disabled people were in the top tiers of people fighting for climate justice to begin with. But are people letting us do that? No, they are not, because they don't like us in positions of power, because we make people uncomfortable. But anyway, I don't want to say let's all hold hands and sing around the campfire and it'll fix all our problems, because that's not reality, and that's not going to fix everything. But what I am saying is that various activist movements really need to start listening to each other and including each other and teaming up as they move forward so that we can actually get substantial amounts of stuff done. Because the Earth is kind of important. We kind of need to keep her around. And yelling at disabled people for using a straw isn't really gonna help us to save the Earth very, very much. And maybe we could use our energy elsewhere. So with that, let me know what you think about this in the comments. If there's anything I forgot about, probably did. Sorry, this was kind of a short one, but I stopped researching when I started really, really panicking. So this is all the info I have right now. But I think it was cohesive. I hope that it was interesting and helpful. It was important regardless. And as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for learning. Remember, it's never too late to start over. And I look forward to seeing you, my dear, in the next one.